The sterile white walls of the Vylkor analysis chamber pulsed with a faint, unnerving green light. A low, guttural hum vibrated through Engineer Theron's chitinous exoskeleton. His triple-jointed fingers, each tipped with a delicate sensor array, hovered over a holographic display. On the projection, strands of human deoxyribonucleic acid spun in intricate, bewildering patterns. He had spent 29 cycles on this, trying to categorize the new species, to fit them into the Vylkor universal taxonomy. Every other species followed predictable patterns. Their useful genes were compact, efficient, ordered. Humans, however, were a chaotic mess. 98% of their genetic code, the vast majority, was meaningless, non-coding sequences. Junk, their own primitive scientists called it. Theron's primary processing unit, normally a paragon of logical efficiency, felt a strange, cold dread. He had submitted his initial report to Overlord Zarthus, anomalous biological entity, classification pending, high genetic instability detected. Zarthus had not been pleased. Overlord Zarthus was perfection itself, a Vylkor sculpted over millennia by pure genetic optimization. He believed in order, in the eradication of all biological inefficiency. This human junk was an insult to his very being. Theron zoomed into a specific segment, a long, repetitive sequence. It was just noise. But the more he looked, the more a tiny illogical whisper started in his own core processing unit. What if it wasn't noise at all? What if this junk was something else, something terrifying? Dr. Eris Thorne hummed a tuneless song as he peered into the microscope, his lab coat stained with coffee from a forgotten spill. The air in his small, cluttered laboratory smelled of ozone and stale pizza. He pushed his spectacles further up his nose. Remarkable, he muttered to himself, a genuine smile spreading across his face. Absolutely remarkable. On the slide, human cells, under extreme pressure, were doing something impossible. He had isolated a specific sequence within what the wider scientific community still stubbornly called junk deoxyribonucleic acid. He believed it wasn't junk. He believed it was a cosmic joke, a hidden treasure. For years, he had been ridiculed for his junk DNA theories. Colleagues at the prestigious Silas University, where he now taught only 2 days a week, called him Dr. Delusional. His own sister, Alara, constantly nagged him to get a real job. But Eris didn't care. He knew. He felt it in his bones. This was the key. He carefully adjusted the focus. The cells were not just adapting to the pressure, they were transforming. Their membrane structures were shifting, becoming more rigid, less permeable. It was a rapid, almost instantaneous evolution. We are not what they think we are, he whispered, a thrill running down his spine. We are so much more. A sudden chime from his ancient datapad pulled him away from his discovery. It was Alara. He sighed. Probably another lecture about his financial choices. Eris, are you there? Alara's voice, tinny and impatient, came through the datapad speaker. You promised you would pick up supplies for the colony. Eris winced. He had forgotten. Again. Alara, I'm on the verge of a breakthrough here. These cells, they are showing extraordinary resilience. Resilience won't feed us or fix the atmospheric scrubbers, Alara shot back, her tone a mix of exasperation and concern. Commander Vance needs those power couplings yesterday. The new recruits are complaining about the air quality. Commander Vance will understand, Eris said dismissively, still staring at the microscope. This research is for the good of all humanity. Imagine, Alara, a human race impervious to disease, capable of surviving in any environment. Imagine a human race that can actually breathe without coughing, Alara retorted. A hint of something deeper, a weariness, in her voice. Just get the supplies, Eris. Please. For once. Eris sighed, reluctantly pulling away from his work. Fine. But this is important. More important than air filters, believe me. He picked up his worn utility jacket. His sister meant well, but she simply didn't understand the magnitude of his work. No one did. Not yet. Meanwhile, on the Vylkor flagship, the Vylkor Purities, Overlord Zarthus addressed his council. His voice, modulated by a built-in vocoder, was cold and resonant. Engineer Theron's latest report is disturbing. The species designated human, from Sector Gamma 7, exhibits anomalous genetic structure. A vast percentage of their deoxyribonucleic acid is designated non-coding. It serves no apparent purpose. It is chaos. Counselor Vylkor, a stern older Vylkor, interjected. Overlord. Perhaps it is simply a primitive inefficiency. A species still evolving, still shedding unneeded baggage. Inefficiency is a weakness, Counselor, Sarthas countered, his optic sensors narrowing. And chaos is an anathema. Our ancestors purged all inefficiency from our own genome millennia ago. We achieved perfection. These humans are a regression. Their very existence is an insult to the purity of the galactic order. Engineer Theron, standing humbly to the side, activated a smaller holographic projection. Overlord, my continued analysis suggests something more. Under extreme stress, or when exposed to specific energy frequencies, these non-coding sequences become active. They appear to be a reservoir of dormant genetic information, capable of rapid, unpredictable expression. A younger Vylkor scientist, Xylar, spoke up. Like a blank slate, capable of being written upon instantly. This could be an incredible evolutionary advantage, Overlord. Imagine adapting to any environment within cycles. Imagine a plague of unpredictable biological mutations spreading across the galaxy. Zarthus snarled, turning his full attention to Xylar. We have seen this before, young scientist. The ancient records of the chaotic ones, the precursors. They, too, possess this chaotic adaptability. They nearly consume the galaxy before we contain them. Xylar flinched, but persisted. But Overlord, if we could understand this, harness it. We will not harness chaos, Zarthus declared, his voice rising in volume. We will contain it, eradicate it. The human species represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Deploy the fleet. Establish a quarantine perimeter around Gamma 7. Prepare for full planetary assimilation. Engineer Theron, you will lead the ground team. Your task is to extract living specimens for further study and then neutralize the genetic threat. Commander Vylkor, prepare the orbital bombardment protocols. We will sanitize this sector. Theron bowed, a tremor running through his frame. As you command, Overlord. The cold dread intensified. He was to destroy something he was only just beginning to understand. Back on the human colony world of New Eden, Eris grumbled as he navigated the bustling marketplace. The air, despite Alara's worries, was a pleasant mix of recycled oxygen and the earthy scent of hydroponic gardens. He carried a heavy-duty power coupling under one arm. A group of rowdy young recruits, fresh from Earth, jogged past him laughing. They wore the standard drab uniforms of the Colonial Defense Force. He wished they would put more effort into physical training and less into their social media feeds. Dr. Thorne, a booming voice called out. Commander Kalen Vance, a man whose face seemed permanently set in a grimace, stood by the supply depot, arms crossed. Vance was a veteran of the Outer Rim skirmishes, a man who saw threats behind every shadow. He was also Alara's immediate superior, which meant he often had to deal with Eris's eccentricities. Commander, Eris replied, trying to sound more enthusiastic than he felt. Apologies for the delay. Important research. Vance snorted. Important research isn't going to fix a failing atmospheric regulator, Doctor. The recruits are starting to get headaches. We need these couplings installed yesterday. He took the heavy coupling from Eris, his muscular arms handling it with ease. You know, Doctor, sometimes I wonder if your head's in the stars so much, you forget your feet are on solid ground. My feet are very much on solid ground, Commander, Eris said, adjusting his spectacles. They just happen to be standing on the cusp of a revolutionary understanding of human biology. Vance raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Right. Well, for now, let's focus on revolutionizing the air quality. We got reports of unusual energy signatures on the long-range scanners. Could be pirates. Could be anything. So, keep an eye out, Doctor. Even your junk DNA won't save you if a railgun slug comes through your lab wall. He turned and barked orders at a couple of young technicians. Eris watched him go, a pang of irritation. No one took him seriously. Not the scientists, not the military. He pulled out his datapad again, rereading his own research notes. Genetic adaptability. latent potential, environmental response triggers. He muttered the words to himself. He knew this was real. He knew it was important. He just needed the data, the proof. He resolved to return to his lab immediately. Hours later, the colony's alarms blared, a piercing guttural wail that tore through the peaceful hum of New Eden. Eris, startled, dropped his microscope slide. The green glow from the Vylkor fleet, a sickening, unearthly light, filled the observation deck windows. Hundreds of ships, sleek and menacing, had materialized from subspace, surrounding the planet like a swarm of predatory insects. Report. Vance's voice crackled over the colony's comms, sharp with urgency. What is our status? Ilara's voice, surprisingly calm despite the panic, came through. Commander, the Vylkor. We are being hailed. They are demanding immediate surrender and full planetary compliance. They are broadcasting a generic quarantine protocol. They say we are a biological anomaly. Eris's heart hammered against his ribs. Biological anomaly? Could they have found out about the junk DNA? It was impossible. Their technology was far beyond anything humanity possessed. Biological anomaly? Vance scoffed. What in the blazes are they talking about? Tell them to go to blazes themselves. Initiate defensive protocols. All personnel to battle stations. Civilians to shelters. Dr. Thorne, get to the main bunker, now. Eris hesitated. His lab. His data. He looked at his microscope, then at the menacing green glow outside. This was it. The proof. He had to get his research to safety. He snatched his datapad, the one containing all his theories and findings, and shoved it into his pocket. He then grabbed a small, hardened data crystal, a backup of his most critical findings. He clutched it tight. On the Vylkor Purity, Overlord Zarthus watched the human colony's defiant response with cold satisfaction. Foolish primitives. They believe their puny defenses can withstand Vylkor Purity. He gestured. Engineer Theron, deploy the ground forces. Scan for the highest genetic concentration, specifically any individuals exhibiting unique genetic markers. Theron bowed, a leaden feeling in his chest. As you command, Overlord. He knew what that meant. They were looking for the anomalous humans. Humans like the ones Eris had described. As the Vylkor dropships descended, a hail of plasma fire erupted from the colony's meager turrets. The Vylkor shield shimmered, absorbing the hits with ease. One dropship, however, took a direct hit to its ventral plate, sending it spinning. It crashed violently into the colony's outskirts, far from the main defensive lines. Damage report, Zarthus demanded. One dropship down, Overlord, a Vylkor tactical officer reported. Minor personnel loss. The human projectile was unusually potent. Zarthus dismissed it with a wave of his hand. Inconsequential. Press the attack. Commander Vance barked orders, his face grim. Hold the line. Concentrate fire on their dropships. Protect the civvy shelters. The colony's limited forces were being overwhelmed. The Vylkor ground troops, encased in gleaming segmented armor, moved with chilling efficiency. They were faster, stronger, and seemingly impervious to human kinetic weapons. Eris, running through the chaotic corridors towards the main bunker, saw the first Vylkor breaching team. They were tall, elegant in their destructive grace, their multi-jointed legs moving with impossible speed. He ducked into a side maintenance tunnel, heart pounding. He could hear their precise metallic voices, cold and emotionless, giving orders. He realized they weren't just fighting, they were systematically scanning, categorizing. Alara's voice, strained, came over the comm system connected to his datapad. Eris, where are you? The main bunker is under heavy assault. Get here, now. I'm trying, Alara, Eris gasped, pushing through a narrow crawl space. He felt the rumble of explosions above him, the smell of burnt wiring and dust filling his nostrils. The air grew thick, making him cough. This was the failing atmospheric regulator Alara had warned him about. He felt dizzy, his lungs burning. Suddenly, a Vylkor drone, a small multi-lensed flying scanner, zipped into the tunnel ahead of him. It emitted a high-pitched whine as it scanned him. A red light pulsed. Eris scrambled backward, but the drone was too fast. It projected a single chilling phrase in perfect human language. Genetic signature identified. High anomaly probability. Specimen acquisition recommended. Aris froze, terror gripping him. They were looking for him. Or rather, for what was inside him. He remembered his research, the rapid cellular adaptation. He was feeling weak, dizzy from the lack of oxygen. What if? He gripped the data crystal in his pocket. He had to get it to someone. He had to get it out. The drone began to emit a low-frequency sonic pulse, disorienting him. His vision blurred. He felt a sudden, sharp pain as a Vylkor soldier, having followed the drone, fired a stunning blast. Eris collapsed, the data crystal flying from his grasp, sliding into a dark vent. "No," he rasped, his voice fading. Darkness swallowed him. When Eris awoke, he was in a dimly lit, cold chamber. His head throbbed. He was strapped to a metallic slab, his limbs secured. The air was sterile, with a faint metallic tang. Before him, Engineer Theron stood, his optic sensors fixed on a holographic display that showed a magnified image of Eris's own genetic code. Theron's voice was a low hum, calm but analytical. "Remarkable. The non-coding sequences are active. Your cellular structures are exhibiting rapid repair functions. You were exposed to atmospheric toxins, yet your body is adapting at an accelerated rate." Eris struggled against the restraints. "What do you want from me?" "Understanding," Theron replied. "Our species optimized ourselves millennia ago. We shed all perceived inefficiencies. We achieved genetic purity, peak performance. Yet, we lack this adaptability. This chaotic potential. Overlord Zarthus views it as a threat. I merely seek to comprehend it." "It's not chaos," Eris retorted, catching his breath. "It's evolution, it's potential. It's the ability to change, to overcome, to survive what you perfected beings cannot." Theron's optic sensors seemed to flicker, as if considering this. Our records of the ancient chaotic ones describe similar rapid adaptation. They nearly eradicated galactic order. Zarthus fears a resurgence. "Perhaps the chaotic ones weren't evil," Eris said, pushing through his pain. "Perhaps they were just misunderstood. Perhaps they were just survivors." A new voice, cold and sharp, cut through the air. "Do not fill our prisoner's mind with such fallacies, Engineer." Overlord Zarthus strode into the chamber, his imposing form casting long shadows. "This potential is a disease. It is a biological weapon waiting to be unleashed. Engineer, proceed with the full genetic mapping. Then, prepare for cellular deconstruction. We must understand it. Then, eradicate it from the galactic records." Theron hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Overlord, perhaps further observation would yield more insight. Deconstruction would be final." "Are you questioning my orders, Engineer?" Zarthus's voice hardened. "No, Overlord," Theron said, his posture straightening. "Only seeking the most efficient path to understanding." Zarthus studied him for a moment, then relented. "Very well, you have 24 cycles. If you cannot extract meaningful data, we proceed with deconstruction. I will not have this chaos corrupting our order." He turned and left, his movements precise and unyielding. Eris watched Theron, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "You don't want to destroy it, do you? You're curious." Theron returned Eris's gaze. "Curiosity is an inefficiency, but understanding is paramount." Meanwhile, back on New Eden, the human defenders were pushed back. Commander Vance had established a last-ditch defensive perimeter around the main bunker. His face was streaked with soot and blood, his uniform torn. Ilara, despite her initial apprehension, was coordinating defensive fire, her voice steady and clear over the comms. "Sector 3, heavy Vylkor concentration. Focus all available fire." A young recruit, barely out of training, stumbled back, clutching a bleeding arm. "Commander, we can't hold them. Their shields are too strong." Vance grabbed the recruit by the collar. "We don't have a choice, son. We fight until we can't. This is our home." He pushed the recruit towards a waiting medic. He scanned the battle, his eyes narrowed. Where was Eris? He hadn't seen the doctor since the initial attack. He had a bad feeling. He'd seen that Vylkor drone. It wasn't just targeting military. It was looking for something else. Suddenly, a series of smaller explosions rocked the Vylkor lines. A ragged group of miners, their tools converted into makeshift weapons, emerged from an old ventilation shaft. They were led by a gruff, stocky woman named Mara, known for her temper and her uncanny ability to fix anything mechanical. She had a heavy wrench in one hand, sparking with a jury-rigged power cell. "Anyone want a piece of New Eden?" she bellowed, swinging the wrench like a club. The miners, hardened by years of extracting volatile minerals, were a chaotic but effective force. Their knowledge of the colony's hidden tunnels, an unexpected advantage. This was Mara's subplot, the colony's hidden strength. Vance saw them and a grim smile touched his lips. "Well, look at that." Our esteemed miners finally decided to join the party. He quickly adapted his strategy. Mara, flanking maneuver, through Sector 4. Create a diversion. We need to pull their heavy units away from the bunker entrance. Mara gave a thumbs up, her eyes gleaming with a fierce joy. "You got it, Commander. Show these spacebugs what real grit looks like." The miners, using their knowledge of the colony's old pipes and access ways, started hitting the Vylkor from unexpected angles, using their adapted tools to damage vital Vylkor equipment. As the battle raged, Ilara kept trying to raise Eris on her personal comms. No answer. A cold dread seeped into her. She remembered his junk DNA talk, his insistence that it was special. What if the Vylkor had specifically targeted him? She thought of the data crystal he clutched so often. She had seen him drop something just before he vanished. She had to find him, or at least find whatever he had dropped. She left her station, ignoring Vance's orders to stay put. This was her brother, after all. Back on the Vylkor Purity, Theron meticulously ran scans on Eris. He injected him with various compounds, exposed him to different energy frequencies, all while observing the furious, unpredictable activity within Eris's cells. The junk DNA was indeed not junk. It was a complex, self-organizing library of genetic blueprints. When exposed to a specific nerve agent, Eris's cells didn't just resist it, they produced an enzyme that neutralized it. When exposed to a specific radiation, his cells created a unique protein shield. It was magnificent. It was terrifying. The adaptability is beyond anything recorded, Theron murmured to himself, forgetting Eris was listening. It's like they possess a biological universal solvent, capable of rewriting their own code on the fly. Eris, despite the discomfort, felt a surge of pride. "I told you. It's our strength. It's why we'll survive." Theron paused, turning to Eris. "Survival is a prime directive. But this is beyond mere survival. This is a deliberate, encoded capacity for radical self-transformation. It suggests an origin, a purpose, far beyond incidental evolution." Just then, Xyler, the younger Vylkor scientist, entered the chamber, his posture less rigid than the others. He looked at Eris, then at Theron, his optic sensors seeming to convey a strange mix of fear and wonder. "Engineer Theron, the Overlord is demanding an update. He grows impatient." "The data is still compiling," Theron replied, not looking away from his screen. "The complexity is immense." Xyler moved closer, lowering his voice. "I have been reviewing the old archives, Engineer. The records of the chaotic ones. They speak of a seed code, a primal genetic template that allowed for extreme biological variation. The Vylkor purged this from our own lines, believing it led to instability and degradation. But what if—" he trailed off, looking at Eris with a new understanding. "What if it was not degradation but expansion?" Theron looked at Xyler, a rare flicker of recognition in his eye. "Expansion. Yes. A concept lost to our people. The chaotic ones were not just adaptable. They were evolving beyond form, beyond limitation." Eris, sensing a shift in their demeanor, pushed. "So, you see it. We're not a threat to order. We're a living testament to what evolution truly means. We don't need external optimization. We build it ourselves." Xyler looked conflicted. "If the Overlord knew we were discussing this—" "The Overlord seeks purity," Theron stated, his voice flat. "Purity often blinds one to potential." He paused. "Continue your research into the chaotic ones' seed code, Xyler. Find anything that parallels these human sequences. Anything that could explain this reservoir." On New Eden, Ilara crawled through the dark, smoke-filled maintenance tunnels, her comms unit flashing no signal. The air was acrid, thick with the smell of burning plastic and ozone. She had remembered Eris describing how he would hide important things in obscure vents. She shone her datapad's light into the grind-caked passages. "Eris, you idiot," she muttered, her voice cracking. "Always leaving your important things everywhere." She knew she was putting herself in danger, but a cold fear had settled in her gut. She pictured her brother, always so focused on his abstract theories, oblivious to the world around him. He needed her, even if he never admitted it. Then she saw it. A faint glint of light. A small, hardened data crystal, lodged in a crevice. She reached for it, her fingers brushing against something slimy. She pulled it free, wiping the grime from its surface. It was Eris's backup crystal, the one with his junk DNA research. She felt a surge of relief, followed by a new wave of fear. If the Vylkor had specifically targeted Eris, this crystal could be dangerous. She had to get it to Commander Vance. He would know what to do. She heard distant footsteps. Vylkor. She quickly hid the crystal inside her boot and pressed herself against the cold metal wall, holding her breath. Hours later, the Vylkor ground assault pressed harder. Commander Vance's forces were dwindling. The miners, led by Mara, were still making a nuisance of themselves, but they were taking heavy losses. "Mara, pull back. Regroup at the north access point," Vance yelled into his comms. "Can't, Commander." Mara's voice was strained. "They've sealed the main tunnels. We're trapped." A new Vylkor unit, heavily armored and carrying strange, glowing implements, began advancing on the bunker. Vance recognized them. They were extraction teams, designed to capture targets, not just kill them. What were they looking for? Just then, Alara burst into the bunker, gasping for breath, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. "Commander Vance, I found this." She pulled the data crystal from her boot, her hand trembling. "It's Eris's. His junk DNA research. I think they took him because of this." Vance took the crystal, his eyes narrowing as he looked at the intricate swirling patterns on its surface. Junk DNA? He was right, wasn't he? They weren't just attacking us. They were hunting something. He clutched the crystal. This could be our only leverage. He looked at Alara, a new respect in his eyes. "You did good, Alara. Now get to the main comms array. We need to send out a distress call. A coded one. We need someone to know what these Vylkor are really after." On the Vylkor purity, Eris felt a strange sensation. Theron had injected him with a new serum, a complex mix of Vylkor stimulants and human cellular triggers. His cells were reacting violently, rapidly. He could feel it, a buzzing, tingling sensation under his skin. His vision sharpened. Sounds became clearer. He could almost hear the faint hum of the ship's distant engines. He felt stronger. "The adaptability is accelerating," Theron noted, his voice filled with an almost forbidden excitement. "The human genome is producing previously unknown enzymes, capable of manipulating electromagnetic fields at a micro level." Xyler rushed in, holding a datapad. "Engineer, I found it. The seed code from the Chaotic One's archives. It's an exact match for one of the repetitive sequences in the human non-coding deoxyribonucleic acid. This isn't just a reservoir, it's an instruction set. A metagenome." Eris's eyes widened. "A metagenome? You mean it's a program?" "A program for infinite biological variation," Theron clarified, a tremor in his voice. "The Chaotic Ones were not just adaptable, they were masters of self-evolution. They changed their forms, their functions, their very being, to fit any challenge. Zarthus sees this as instability. But it is true, freedom. The archives say the Chaotic Ones almost destroyed themselves with this power," Xyler countered, a hint of fear. "They couldn't control their own transformations. They became formless, monstrous. Perhaps they simply lacked the intelligence to control it, or the emotional stability," Eris mused, his mind racing. "We have both. We have our minds, our empathy. We can learn to control it." Theron's optic sensors were fixed on Eris, a new light in them. The Vylkor's path to perfection was to remove this capacity, to become static. But perhaps that was our ultimate flaw. We traded true evolution for predictability. Overlord Zarthus's voice boomed through the comms. "Engineer Theron, status report. The human colony is resisting beyond acceptable parameters. Their defiance is an affront. What progress on the biological weapon? Theron hesitated. He knew what Zarthus wanted to hear. But looking at Eris, he saw not a weapon, but a key. Overlord, the human genetic anomaly is profound. Its potential for adaptation is unparalleled. We believe it represents a dormant, hyper-evolutionary pathway. It is not merely a threat, it is a fundamental shift in biological understanding. He knew he was taking a huge risk. Silence. Then, Zarthus's voice colder than ever. You speak of it as if it were a new god, engineer. You are blinded by your analysis. Prepare the deconstruction protocols. I will be there to oversee its demise myself. The comms cut out. Theron turned to Xylar. He knows. He suspects. Xylar, you must help me. We must get this human specimen out of here. If Zarthus destroys this, he destroys a fundamental truth about life itself. He destroys hope for our own species to overcome its self-imposed limitations. Xylar's triple-jointed fingers twitched. Defying the Overlord? That is death, engineer. And living in ignorance is a slower death, Theron said, his voice firm. The chaotic ones were purged because they were misunderstood. We will not repeat that mistake. Humans possess a seeds that the Vylkor once discarded. It may be the only thing that can save us from our own rigid perfection. He looked at Eris. Human, can you move? Can you help yourself? Eris flexed his fingers, his muscles responding with unusual vigor. He could feel the energy coursing through him. I think so. What's the plan? Theron began working furiously on the restraints, his movements precise and quick. We will trigger a localized energy surge in this section of the ship. It will cause a brief blackout, sufficient to disable the security systems. Xylar, you will prepare an escape pod. It must be configured for human physiology. We have little time. Xylar, still trembling, nodded. He moved with sudden resolve. He saw the truth in Theron's words. The path of rigid purity had led them to this sterile, unthinking cruelty. Back on New Eden, Commander Vance was at the breaking point. The Vylkor had breached the bunker's outer defenses. Plasma fire lit up the interior. Fall back to the core chamber, he roared, pulling Alara behind a reinforced bulkhead. Alara, have you sent that distress call? Almost, she yelled back, frantically typing on a secured console. Just need to bypass their jamming array. It's a standard Vylkor frequency, but I'm trying to piggyback it onto an old Colonial Defense Force burst signal. A Vylkor elite team entered the bunker, their weapons humming. They ignored the remaining human defenders, moving with chilling purpose directly towards Vance and Alara. Target identified, data carrier, and associated entity, a metallic voice announced. Vance cursed. They knew about the crystal. He raised his rifle, aiming at the lead Vylkor. You want it. Come and get it. Just as the Vylkor prepared to fire, the entire Vylkor purity ship above them shuddered violently. A cascade of alarms blared. On the Vylkor purity, Theron had initiated the energy surge. Lights flickered, then died, plunging the ship into darkness. Security systems went offline. Eris, his enhanced senses detecting the precise moment of system failure, broke free of his restraints with a surprising burst of strength. He had adapted. His muscles had gained new resilience. Go, Theron urged, pushing Eris towards the corridor. Xylar is waiting for you at the auxiliary escape pod bay, Sector 9. We will draw their attention. Eris looked back at Theron, then at Xylar, who was already running ahead. You're risking everything for me. You represent everything we discarded, Theron replied, and everything we might become again. Go. Live. He activated a small device on his wrist, sending a concentrated energy pulse towards a nearby power conduit, causing a secondary explosion and attracting the attention of patrolling Vylkor guards. Eris sprinted through the dark corridors, his enhanced senses guiding him through the labyrinthine ship. He could hear the Vylkor guards closing in, their precise footsteps echoing. He was faster, stronger, more aware. His junk DNA was doing its work. He felt a weird, exhilarating rush. He was evolving. He met Xylar at the escape pod bay. Xylar was already inside the small pod, frantically typing. Hurry, human. They are already responding to the system failures. Eris squeezed into the cramped pod. Xylar pulled a lever. The pod detached, plunging through the Vylkor Purity's hull with a violent shudder. Alarms screamed behind them. The escape pod's thrusters engaged, sending them hurtling away from the Vylkor flagship. On the bridge of the Vylkor Purity, Overlord Zarthus roared in fury. "Engineer Theron, you traitor. You have betrayed the purity of the Vylkor. All units, locate and intercept that escape pod. Bring the human specimen back, dead or alive." He turned to his tactical officer. "And prepare the planetary bombardment. If we cannot possess their chaotic genetics, we will erase them completely." As Eris and Xyler plummeted towards New Eden, the Vylkor Purity unleashed a devastating barrage. Massive energy beams rained down on the colony, tearing through its remaining shields. The ground shuddered. Buildings exploded. "They're sterilizing the planet," Xyler cried, his voice filled with despair. "Zarthus is eliminating all traces." Eris's heart sank. New Eden, his home, Ilara, Vance, all of them. Gone. A cold, fierce rage began to burn within him. He looked at the data crystal in his hand, then at Xyler. "This isn't enough," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "This won't save anyone if there's no one left to save." He thought of the metagenome. The instructions said for infinite biological variation. He thought of the small changes he had felt. He knew what he had to do. "Engineer Theron risked everything for this knowledge," Xyler said, looking at the crystal. "It must be delivered somewhere safe." "Safe isn't going to cut it anymore," Eris replied, a strange calm settling over him. "We need to fight back, and we're going to fight with what makes us unique." He explained his theory to Xyler, a wild, audacious plan that hinged on the full, uncontrolled activation of his junk DNAs. Xyler listened, his optic sensors widening. "That is impossible. The risks are catastrophic. You could unravel your own genetic structure. Or I could become something more," Eris countered, his gaze unwavering. "The chaotic ones might have failed because they lack control. But we have logic, we have purpose, and we have something to protect." He looked at Xyler. "Will you help me? Guide me through your Vylkor knowledge of genetic manipulation. Help me understand what I'm about to become." Xyler hesitated, then nodded slowly. "The Overlord will execute me for this. But the truth is more valuable than my life." On New Eden, Commander Vance and Ilara were trapped in the core chamber, its reinforced walls groaning under the Vylkor bombardment. The air was thick with dust and the smell of ozone. "The comms are down," Ilara cried. "We're completely cut off." Vance looked grim. "It was a long shot anyway. At least we got the distress beacon out, even if it was just a burst. Someone might have picked it up." He looked at the data crystal in his hand. "This better be worth it, Eris." Suddenly, the last remaining Vylkor elite team burst into the core chamber. They opened fire, their plasma bolts ripping through the air. Vance returned fire, but he knew it was hopeless. They were outnumbered, outgunned. Just as a Vylkor soldier raised its weapon to fire a killing shot at Ilara, a blinding flash erupted from the sky. The escape pod, now glowing with an eerie, unstable energy, slammed into the ground nearby, sending a shockwave through the colony. From the crumpled wreckage of the pod emerged Eris Thorn, but he was no longer the same. His form shimmered, his skin seeming to ripple with internal light. He stood taller, his movements fluid and unnaturally fast. His eyes, normally hidden behind his spectacles, glowed with an intense, sapphire blue light. He was radiating an electromagnetic field, subtle yet powerful, that caused the Vylkor's weapons to spark and short-circuit. The Vylkor soldiers in the core chamber faltered, their weapons sputtering. Eris, moving with impossible speed, disarmed them, his hands phasing through their weapons as if they were made of mist. He didn't harm them, he simply rendered them harmless. "Eris?" Ilara whispered, utterly bewildered. What are you?" "Unhuman, Ilara," Eris said, his voice deeper, resonating with a strange power. "Just a bit more so." He turned to Vance. "Commander, the Vylkor ships. Their targeting systems are based on precise energy signatures. If we can disrupt those, we can turn their own weapons against them." Vance stared, speechless. He had scoffed at junk DNA, but this was beyond belief. "How?" he finally managed. I can project an electromagnetic field, Eris explained, his glowing eyes fixed on the Vylkor flagship in orbit. But I need a conduit, a massive energy source. The colony's core reactor. If we overload it, I can use the surge to disrupt the entire Vylkor fleet's targeting matrix. Xyler, stepping out from the wreckage of the escape pod, looking pale and shaken, quickly explained to Vance. His junk DNA's adapted. It is converting ambient energy into a controlled electromagnetic pulse. It is unprecedented. But it is also extremely unstable. It could destroy him. It's a risk I have to take, Eris said, already moving towards the core reactor. Vance, clear the way. Elara, you're going to help me fine-tune the frequency. Xyler, your knowledge of Vylkor systems is crucial. You're going to tell us where to aim this. Vance, despite his shock, was a soldier. He saw an opportunity. All right, Doctor. Let's see how much junk your DNA really is. He rallied the remaining defenders. Clear a path to the reactor. Protect the Doctor. As Eris, Elara, and Xyler worked frantically in the core chamber, the Vylkor Purity continued its bombardment. Overlord Zarthus, enraged by the escape of the specimen and the unexpected resistance, accelerated the sterilization protocol. Burn them all, leave nothing behind. Theron, who had been apprehended and confined to a holding cell, watched the devastation on a small monitor. He felt a strange mix of despair and pride. He had chosen his path. He had seen the truth. In the core chamber, Eris stood before the massive, humming reactor, his hands outstretched. His entire body pulsed with blue light. Elara, remembering her brother's complex equations, guided him, calibrating the energy surge. Frequency stable, increasing power, she shouted over the groaning of the reactor. Xyler, his small Vylkor hands trembling, tapped rapidly on a console. The primary targeting array, located between the port and starboard weapon banks. It is the most vulnerable point. Eris focused, drawing immense energy from the reactor. The air around him crackled. He felt pain, extreme pain, as his body struggled to contain the raw power. But deeper, something else was happening. His DNA was not just adapting, it was creating. New neural pathways were firing, allowing him to instinctively grasp complex energy manipulations. He was not just a conduit, he was a conductor. With a primal roar, Eris unleashed the concentrated electromagnetic pulse. A wave of shimmering blue energy erupted from the core chamber, tearing through the atmosphere, engulfing the Vylkor fleet. On the Vylkor Purity, the targeting systems went wild. Weapons fired erratically, some even turning on allied ships. Shields flickered and failed. Confusion reigned. What is happening? Zarthus shrieked, as alarms blared across his bridge. Their weaponry is offline. Our own ships are firing on each other. It is the human specimen, Overlord, a tactical officer cried. He has somehow generated an electromagnetic pulse of unprecedented magnitude. It is disrupting all our calibrated systems. Eris, exhausted, collapsed to his knees, his body racked with pain, the light fading from his eyes. Did it work? He gasped. Elara knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. You did it, Eris. You actually did it. Commander Vance, watching the chaos unfold on his comm screen, allowed himself a small, disbelieving laugh. Well, I'll be damned. The Doctor's junk finally saved our bacon. He quickly seized the opportunity. All remaining forces. Target their disabled ships. Focus fire. Show them what happens when you mess with humanity. The remaining human defenders, buoyed by this miracle, launched a desperate counterattack. The miners, Mada and her crew, emerged from their tunnels, striking at the Vylkor ground forces, now disoriented by the chaos. On the Vylkor Purity, Overlord Zarthus, seeing his fleet in disarray, issued a furious order. We retreat. This species is too unpredictable, too chaotic. They are a blight. We will regroup. We will devise a new strategy to cleanse this sector. The Vylkor fleet, damaged and disorganized, jumped into subspace, leaving behind a scarred but not broken New Eden. Days later, New Eden was in ruins, but it was still human. Rescue efforts were underway. Eris, his body weak but recovering, lay in the makeshift infirmary. His junk DNAs had returned to its dormant state, the incredible transformations having taken their toll. But the experience had changed him forever. He saw the world with new eyes, not just as a scientist, but as a survivor. Alara sat beside him, holding his hand. You really are something else, Eris. A hero. No, Eris said, a faint smile on his lips. Just a human, with a little more potential. He looked at her. And you, Alara, you saved my research. You got the distress call out. You're the real hero. Commander Vance entered the infirmary, his usual grimace replaced by a look of bewildered respect. Dr. Thorne, or should I say, the human electromagnetic pulse. He paused. Your junk DNA saved us. The distress call you sent out, it was picked up by a colonial fleet patrol. They're en route. Reinforcements are coming, and they want to know everything about what just happened here. Xyler, the Vylkor scientist, stood awkwardly in the doorway, escorted by 2 human guards. Commander Vance, I believe it is vital that the human species understands the true nature of their biology, and the Vylkor's true history. Vance nodded. We're going to need a lot of debriefing, Xyler. But for now, you're safe. And you're going to help us understand. Dr. Thorne, it seems your junks is suddenly the most valuable thing in the galaxy. Eris looked at the data crystal, then at Xyler, then at Alara. He knew this was just the beginning. The Vylkor would return. But now, humanity had a weapon they never knew they possessed. Not a weapon of destruction, but of adaptability, of evolution, of pure, unpredictable human potential. The galaxy, so used to predictable, optimized life forms, was about to discover that the most dangerous thing was not a perfect machine, but a messy, evolving human with a whole lot of junks they didn't understand. And perhaps a little humor too. After all, who would have thought that the galaxy's greatest strength would come from its biggest joke?